Welcome, traveler, to the Zapped Dragon, a place devoted to the Munchkin Collectible Card Game. In this video, I will explain the rules and what you need to play. The Munchkin Collectible Card Game is a two-player game designed by Eric Lang and Kevin Wilson. You can construct a deck from a variety of different cards. These cards come from either a starter deck or from booster packs that you can purchase separately. Roughly every quarter, there will be a new season released. The booster packs in these seasons will contain brand new cards that can be combined with older ones. With that said, let's dig in. First of all, you need a hero card. There are 6 basic hero types that you can get out of the 3 available starter packs: the Ranger and Warrior, Thief and Cleric, or Wizard and Bard. After that, you will need a deck of 40 cards. These can be neutral cards, indicated by the gray text area, or cards that match your hero type and color. Besides that, you'll need a level counter, a runaway marker, the numbered tokens, and a 6-sided die, all of which you can get out of one of the starter packs. The 1 and the 5 tokens can represent gold, damage points, or anything else that requires tokens. Now that you've got your gear, let's put it all together. This is the suggested way to lay out your cards and tokens. You don't have to do it this way, but it does keep things organized and easy to handle. The stockpile holds the tokens and the die. It sits in the center and off to the side, since you and your opponent will both be drawing from it during the game. Your hero card, level counter, runaway marker, and your purse of gold tokens go here. Your 40 card deck and the discard pile goes right underneath your hero. Your hoard are cards that you've played that remain on the board during the various rounds. These are cards such as loot and allies. The stash is where you place cards that you've sent into battle. Once they've been played, stash cards remain in the stash until the beginning of your next turn, when they go back into your hand. And finally, the Dangerous Monster Zone, or DMZ. This is where all the action happens. You'll send out monsters and defend against enemy monsters here. Got it? Good. Let's see how to play. The object of the game is to win by reducing the opposing hero's life down to 0, or to force the other player to draw a card when they don't have any more in their deck. It's also possible to concede a game, and if both heroes are eliminated at the same time, then the game ends in a draw. To start, set your level counter to 1 and place your runaway marker with the runaway side face up. Take your deck and shuffle it. There are a variety of different card types in the Munchkin CCG, and we'll go through them as we learn how to play. Now, you and your opponent both roll the 6-sided die. Whoever gets the highest roll chooses which player goes first. Whoever goes first gets 1 gold, and the player who goes second gets 2 gold. Both you and your opponent draw a hand of 6 cards. If you think your hand stinks, you can declare a mulligan. You then reshuffle your deck and draw a new hand. You only get 1 mulligan. Your turn is divided up into 3 phases: the warm-up, the Munchkining Phase, and Cooldown. You start with the warm-up. The Warmup Phase has a number of steps, so there's a handy little acronym to help you remember them all. F-U-R-U-D, FURUD. F stands for flip your runaway marker so it shows the runaway side. U stands for unzap your zapped cards. What does zapped mean? Certain cards, like loot, will have abilities printed on them. Hero cards too. The Centaur Warrior, for instance, says, Zap, deal 1 damage to target hero or monster. When you zap a card, you turn it on its side and trigger the ability. A card that is zapped remains so for the rest of your turn until your next warm-up. R is for Reckoning. Any card abilities with the Reckoning keyword gets triggered in the order you choose during this phase. Another U is for Unstash. All the cards in your stash get flipped face down and placed back into your hand. Also, if a monster card has damage tokens, those get discarded back to the stockpile, refreshing your monster and preparing it to fight again. And finally, D is for Draw. You'll draw one card from your deck and place it in your hand. Make sure you don't skip this step. It's actually not uncommon for players to forget to draw their card. In fact, if you're going first at the beginning of the game, it's not a bad idea to draw your first card as soon as you decide to keep your starting hand, since you won't be doing anything else during your first warm-up phase. Also, as of this video, there is no limit on the number of cards you can have in your hand. Just remember, Furud. With all that housekeeping out of the way, now it's time for action. There are a number of things you can do during the Munchkining phase, and you can do them in any order that you choose. You can play loot cards. Loot is denoted by the blue star at the upper left corner, and also has the word loot printed on it. There are different types of loot. Some, like weapons, can be used to defend. We'll talk about defense a little later. Other types of loot have useful effects. You place loot in your hoard, and you can have loot where the added star values are less than or equal to your current level. Loot in your hoard that has an ability can also be played at any time during the Munchkining phase. Mugsy Sap, for instance, says, Smack. Zap this during your turn to deal 1 damage to target hero or target stashed monster. If you have a loot in your hoard, you can also squish it. Squish means you discard the card. You might squish loot because you have a more powerful loot you want to play, or if a loot has a useful ability that's triggered by squishing it. Keep in mind that you cannot choose to squish a loot that is zapped, and a zapped loot cannot be used for defense against monsters, so zap strategically. You can also play an ally. An ally often has useful abilities, and they can be used to defend your hero from monsters. Unlike a loot card though, allies have a life total. If their life goes to 0, that ally gets squished. To play an ally, you simply pay the one-time gold cost in the upper left corner, and the ally goes into your hoard. Another type of card you can play is a location card. Location cards have an ability that usually affects both heroes. Both you and your opponent can have one location card in play at a time, and you can squish the location you control at any time during the Munchkining phase, as long as it isn't zapped. Otherwise, it will remain on the board, much like a loot card. So those are all things you can do, but the real fun in the Munchkining phase is starting a fight. During your Munchkining phase, you can declare a fight and attack your opponent. When you do, you are the attacker and your opponent the defender. As the attacker, you can use monster cards to attack your opponent's hero. Monster cards have a gold cost in the upper left corner of the card. In order to hire the monster, you have to pay at least this amount, although you can also overpay to take advantage of special abilities or to bluff your opponent into thinking it's a more powerful monster. A monster card also has a power stat and a life stat. At the beginning of a fight, choose a card from your hand, place it face down in the DMZ, and place any amount of gold next to it from your purse. Now the defender has some options. They can choose not to defend, and the opponent's hero will take the attack directly. Or, if the defender has unzapped allies or weapons in their hoard, they can commit as many as they want to defend against the face-down card. These cards are then zapped unless otherwise stated. The attacker reveals their card. If it's a monster card, and they paid enough for it, then the gold goes back to the stockpile. The ability of the hired monster triggers first. Then, you look at the defending weapons cards and add up their power. You put that many damage tokens on the monster, and if it's more than the monster's life, then it is squished. If the monster survives, then you take its power and reduce it by the combined defense of the defending weapons. You deal this much damage to any defending allies. If there are more than one allies, the defender decides how to divvy up the damage. Any ally that loses all its life gets squished. The most important thing here is that an ally protects their hero from all the damage, even if it's more than the ally's life total. If there are no defending allies, then the damage from the monster hits the hero. The monster, having done its part, goes to the stash, and any weapons or surviving allies go back to the horde, usually zapped from the fight. Another option the defender has is to run away from a fight. If they do, then they flip the runaway marker over to the limp away side. The face down attacker card remains face down and goes into the attacker's stash. The gold goes back to the attacker's purse. If the defender wants to run away more than once per turn, then they will have to limp away, which means that they will take 2 damage. The defender can limp away as many times as they want, but that damage adds up fast. Now, I said you use monsters to attack your opponent, but you don't have to put a monster card into the fight. You can bluff your opponent by putting a non-monster card face down and putting whatever gold you want on it. You can also underpay for a monster card, which means that it won't actually be able to attack because you didn't pay enough to hire it. If you bluff like this, it's called cheating, and if you are caught cheating, then you take 1 damage and that card goes into your stash face down. Any gold you paid for your cheating card goes back into your purse. Why would you want to cheat? Mostly to exhaust your opponent's defenses. You can pick as many fights as you want in a turn, as long as you have cards in your hand, gold in your purse, or the willingness to cheat. And that is how you fight. Besides picking a fight, you can also directly attack cards in your opponent's horde or stash. You do this using certain hero abilities or card abilities like those you get from Mischief Cards. We'll talk about Mischief Cards in a minute. If you attack cards in your opponent's stash, they must be face up. Going back to the Centaur Warrior, for instance, you can make use of her Zap ability to attack Card Shark for 1 damage, thus squishing it. So, that's a lot of stuff, and you may do some of those things during your Munchkining phase, all of those things, or none of those things, in any order you wish. But when you run out of things to do, then you move on to the Cooldown Phase. During the Cooldown Phase, no player can play cards or activate abilities. This includes interrupts, which we'll talk about in a second. There will be some abilities, however, that will activate automatically during cooldown. If there's an ability that lasts for this turn, or until cooldown, then they end during this phase. Some abilities can last for more than 1 turn though, and end during a later cooldown phase. After all the abilities have been resolved, you increase your level counter by 1, and you take gold from the stockpile until your purse is equal to your level. If you happen to have more gold than your level, then you keep that amount. Once you reach level 10, you stay there, and any abilities that trigger by going up a level don't apply anymore. That ends your turn, and now it's your opponent's turn, and you get to be the defender. One important type of card that I haven't talked about yet are Mischief Cards. Mischief Cards can have all sorts of helpful or nasty abilities. You play a Mischief card by paying its gold cost and placing it face up in the DMZ. Either player can play a Mischief card at almost any time, whether it's their turn or not. The only times you can't play a Mischief card is at the beginning of a player's turn until they've unzapped their cards, or during any cooldown phase. There are 3 types of Mischief cards. Curse. These have ongoing abilities and stick to other cards. Treachery. These usually get discarded after making use of their abilities unless the card says otherwise. And finally, Interrupt. These are like treacheries, but they can be played while another ability is in the process of resolving, thus interrupting it. You can also play interrupts on other interrupts. If this happens, then you resolve the most recently played interrupt, then the next most recently played, and so on. A quick note on priority. When you play cards' abilities, they usually resolve in the order in which they were played. Interrupts are the major exception. If 2 abilities go off at the same time, then the active player decides which ability resolves first. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this introduction to the Munchkin Collectible Card Game. If you look down below, you will find links to the quick start guides and the complete set of rules. If you found this video helpful, then please share it with others. I made it because I enjoy this game and I would like to see others play it. I plan on making more videos, so if there are any topics you would like to see in the future, let me know with a comment. For now though, farewell, traveler.